So I think that Indigenous traditions have had this just a sort of an absolute acceptance of the reality that we come from somewhere. We didn't
Yes.
fall out of a tree. We come from people. So all of us have this expanse that we're connected to, and it's not just that we are limited by their traumas. We also are resourced by their abilities and their
Mm.
resilience and their many, many gifts.
Investigating the wonder of consciousness, the nature of mind, the miracle of the body. We'll talk with elders, lineage holders, seekers, scholars, and practitioners from diverse wisdom traditions to explore the precious convergence of the being, the psyche, and life itself, and how we can use the alchemy inherent to that meeting point for transformation. I'm Laura Karate, and this is the delicate business of being human. Courting the mystery, weaving the story, and bringing it all back home to the body. Welcome back, everyone. This episode, I have the great honor of welcoming Francesca Mason Boring to join us in conversation and hopefully celebration. And Francesca is an international facilitator and trainer of systemic constellation work, family and system constellations. And she is also an author of many amazing books that we'll talk about. I'll send the biography also so that you can get in touch with them. And she has this amazing vantage point of being a bicultural being who enters into constellation with an indigenous knowing field behind her, and has been really instrumental in merging together these two aspects of family and system constellations with ritual and ceremony, which is of absolute utmost interest to me. And so I am so excited and grateful to welcome Francesca with us today. And thank you so much, Francesca, for your time and your energy and your wisdom. And
Well,
thank you for being here.
thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it. And I was excited to hear about your work. And there was a place on one of your recordings or your website, I can't remember which, but there was a place where you spoke about some of what you do and what you offer is walking with people, exploring what it is to be a human being. And I was really touched by that. And I thought, in some ways, we're doing the same thing. So I thought that that was really an invitation in itself. And I loved it. So I feel very fortunate to have been working with family and human systems constellation work.
It's a
And
beautiful
yeah,
field. Huh? It's a
yeah,
beautiful field. And I'm so grateful that you're here because I do some kind of constellation work that has just kind of revealed itself to me over time. It's just like, oh, it needs to be like this and this needs to happen. But I'm so grateful to have an expert and someone who has so much nuance and so much experience in the field. And I feel like my first question to you, because we're going to have people listening with different experience levels, right? Some have done much constellation and some don't even know what we're talking about when we say constellation work. And so I'm wondering if the first thing I could ask you to speak a little bit about is, what is a constellation? What is that?
right,
What does that mean?
right. It's a beautiful modality that helps to make visible hidden dynamics, for instance, in family systems.
Mm,
It understands and accepts and respects the fact that part of our being human is that we're part of a system. We're part of an intergenerational system. And so there was a
Yes.
place where you were speaking in one of your podcasts or on the website about external pressures. And so in family systems constellations, we're really looking for systemic pressures. What are the patterns? What are the tendencies, the beliefs, the traumas within our family system that actually sometimes repeat with uncanny frequency in particular families? And so those events, those traumas, those patterns limit us in some ways. Sometimes they create a fear that really doesn't come from my own biography, but that comes from something that's within my system. So, Family Systems Constellation is a way in which we open the space for this knowing. And very often people represent folks that are within a family system. But it's also done for some people as a meditation. In my mind's eye constellations, they're called. So it really is
Yes.
that we have somehow access to this knowing about where are these systemic impediments in our family system that really limit my life, that really affect the way I go about relationships. So, yeah, I hope that gives you
Yeah, that makes a
part of
lot of
it.
sense. And I've heard you speak before, and it touched me a lot about inclusion, exclusion, and a kind of loyalty that we can have to try to include excluded members of the family. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I just find it so fascinating and
It,
so
it,
touching.
it's so wonderful. I think that in part it has to do with the premise that so many disciplines are beginning to understand, and that is that we are connected. We're connected forward, backward, sideways. We really are connected. And so, one of the things that's so amazing is that as human beings, somewhere at the level of the soul, we have this underpinning, this belief, this conviction that everyone within our family system has the right to belong. And this
Yes.
doesn't matter, it doesn't matter to my soul, to my deep knowing that someone 3 generations ago murdered someone or had an affair or was a drunk or left the family and became a black sheep because they had a different belief system or married someone outside of their class or religion or culture. So, all of these things that created exclusion historically within our family system, it's as though transgenerationally there is always someone in the family system. Sometimes it's the majority of people in the family system. Sometimes it's just one individual who, at some level, says, wait a minute. And what they tend to do at times is replicate that person's life. And in doing so, it's called an entanglement. In doing so, they reinsert, continually remember that person, that part of the family, and make a space for them by creating this echo or replicating the difficulty, the challenge, the limitation, and even the isolation. Yeah.
Yes, it's so fascinating because we can see, I mean, even when you mention that, you can start to think of your own family or families that you're closely connected with, and you go, I saw that, right? I saw that happen, that the person acts out almost as a representative for their own ancestral kind of member.
Right.
And this inside family systems constellation, so this is an attempt at a deeper level to bring back together this
Right.
dislodged this dislodged
Right.
being.
Right. And this is a place where I really do see that there is such a resonance with ceremony, ritual, that there really is at a spiritual level, even this opening and inclusion and relief, that there
Yes.
really is a relief in bringing this person in a conscious way back into the system because they never left. Our lineage is what it is. And so
Yeah.
I think it's so engaging when we look at different spiritual postures. This really is, some people do consider it to have a spiritual aspect to it, and it very much does include reality. It really includes, this is what is true. This person loved this person. We may have remanufactured the narrative to make it appropriate in our family system, but in fact, so often what we find is that many of these different events that happen within the family system, part of what was excluded with that individual was the element of love.
Yes.
So even in the case, for instance, if someone died young or died in a traumatic way, for the sake of proposed sanity, in some systems, because of the level of trauma, people will no longer speak about that person, or it's as though they didn't exist. But it
Yes.
was out of love, out of consideration, an attempt to be helpful, that people essentially excluded that person from the family narrative. And yet, what we find is that somehow at the level of the soul, we have the capacity for this really, I love some people use the term radical inclusion, and that we are capable of that.
We
But
are.
often there's a sense of protection, and for many different reasons, we're protecting our family belief system, or we're protecting a person, or we're protecting the status of a family,
Yes.
any number of things that
Or
create this
even
cycle.
just
Yeah.
protecting ourselves from the idea of pain that will
Mhm.
come
Mhm.
if I include this person, right?
Right,
Like I won't be able to bear it because I don't know, they drink and then I have to watch that and then I have to and I can't, so I contract
right,
my love.
right.
It's so fascinating because this thing that you said, reality, because that is, we get these ideas that spiritual things are like very complex and very lofty and somewhere else, whereas like for me it's like no, it's being here with
Mhm.
what there is here, like,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
being like, oh, there, yeah, it's like this, which is harder
yeah,
than being, I think, in some other kind of yeah, in some other kind of thing. And something that always touches me in constellation work is it often gets very simple. Like it's like, oh, it's like this.
mhm, mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. And that relief that you're
Mhm,
speaking of like, okay,
mhm.
so this person was like this.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. And there is such beauty in that simplicity as well. We want to, the mind loves it when it's complex, right?
Mhm,
Like the mind loves it to be
mhm. Yeah.
so beautiful. And I'm very curious how you would quantify or explain. You know, you said that there is a place or a field that knows. And I have experience, you know, sometimes we'll be in a group and we're doing constellation and we're doing it and everybody's going, how does this work? Like what, why
Mhm.
is this working so well? And how is this possible? And I'm going, because it is, I don't know.
Right.
So maybe you have a better explanation than I do of this field. And I love this name, the knowing field,
Mhm, mhm.
because I feel like that gives us already an entry, right? We know when our intuition, for example, tells us something, or when we have a thread in somehow to this knowing field. But I would love to hear what you would say about it.
Right. So the term the knowing field came from Dr. Albrecht Marr, who's a German psychoanalyst, originally called, my German is atrocious, but Feld, and so the knowing field. Some people call it an informational field. My observation or my sense is that it's innate. I always compare it or illustrate it by saying if you're ever in a grocery store and inexplicably you don't know why, but you really turn and you have direct eye contact with someone who is at a total opposite end of the vegetable section, for instance. So you don't know each other, but there is somehow this innate knowing, this connection that happens even among total strangers. And then with phone calls or emails, I think everyone has experienced at some point that you can't get someone out of your mind, continually thinking about them, and you pick up the phone and they're calling you, or you sit down to try to figure out why can't I get them out of my mind and call or email, text you. So I really look at how many places we're able to confirm that there really is something innate about us as human beings that is fundamentally connected. And one book that I refer to people that has been published probably in every language, it's actually now, I don't even know, maybe 20 years old. But there's a author by the name of Gavin de Becker that wrote a book called The Gift of Fear. And so it's very unconventional because he was a detective. And when he retired, he thought about so many cases in his long career as a detective where people who, when he did interview, who had been assaulted or people that he even had more tragic injury, they were able to say, I had a bad feeling, right? I had a bad feeling. But without exception, in many of the cases that he looked at that had this particular dynamic, people were looking for something cognitive that they could put their finger on. They wanted to see what is it exactly that's making me uncomfortable. And absent that visible, very grounded physical reinforcement for their knowing, they went about their day and were assaulted or had various things happen. And so he, not being from the field of any kind of self-actualization or any
Yes.
kind of psychology, but really looking at crime essentially, looked at this gut feeling that we have and all of these ways that we speak about having a knowing in our body. And then he also, I think the way that he writes is wonderful. He also looked at how early, and I sometimes point to modernity as the force that really, with or without intention, made effort to sort of separate us from those kinds of information. And so he
Absolutely.
looks, it says, we're teaching people not to trust what they know from the first time a child falls, skins their knee, and cries, and some sweet adult comes and says, that doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
don't know what you know.
You don't know what you know. You're
Right,
not experiencing what you're
right,
experiencing.
right.
Wow.
Yeah. So when it comes to the knowing field, the first statement I usually make when there's a real wondering about how it occurs, I truly think it's innate. Some people dream, some people have a sensation in their body, some people just have just a very specific kind of practical intuition. And so I think somehow this beautiful work invites that without prohibition. And we have it whether we're in constellations or out of it, but we don't have maybe the prohibitions around
Yes.
that knowing when we come together in systems constellation. Yeah.
Yes. And it's something I think also about it's not me. I'm representing, so it's not me. So if a thing comes and it makes no sense, I'll say it because it's not me and I'm not supposed to know. But probably we get those notions all the time
Right.
and we go, well, I don't, you know, we kind of bottle it up.
Right.
It's so fascinating. Do you feel like somehow, and this kind of leads into my next question, but do you feel like somehow being Indigenous and having part of your life where you were perhaps less discouraged from being connected to your inner knowing made this a more easeful transition for you, or made this a more attractive transition for you to move into this kind of working?
Right. I think there's a tremendous amount of parallel in most wisdom traditions and
Yes.
family systems constellation. And so I think one of the biggest places where there was for me and for a lot of people, and I sometimes talk about universal indigenous, because again, the way in which we all as human beings actually are connected, even though modernity or conditioning sort of has us tune that out. One of the really beautiful things was indigenous communities, and I would say probably worldwide, are very inclusive of extended family and ancestors.
Yes.
So in constellation work, when there was this acknowledgement of ancestors, of the expanse and the relatedness of cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and their value and their interweaving in what we know, and now it's beautiful because biology also can come to the table and speak about that I was inside of my grandmother's body, physical
Yes.
body. And so this premise about connection is really not so ethereal or so off the table. And I'm
Yes.
very excited because many things, like for instance, psychotherapy begins to expand to include now transgenerational trauma and looking at that history matters. One
Yes.
facilitator encourages when someone is a therapist, they basically inquire, okay, what's happened with you and where were your parents born and when were they born? Did they immigrate? What happened with them? And what might you know about your grandparents? What do you know about the diaspora that you are a part of? So, all of these things really are in our blood and they're in our
Yes.
bones, they're in our DNA. And so, we really, by the minute, are encouraged to be able to include all those things. So, I think that indigenous traditions have had this just a sort of an absolute acceptance of the reality that we come from somewhere. We didn't
Yes.
fall out of a tree. We come from people, and that's whether someone is adopted or not. Even if someone comes from in vitro fertilization, that egg has ancestors, the sperm has
Yes.
ancestors. So all of us have this expanse that we're connected to, and it's not just that we are limited by their traumas, we also are resourced by their abilities and their resilience and their many, many gifts. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's such an important piece to remember too, because we always tend to focus as Westerners for some reason on the trauma that was held down,
yeah,
passed down, not the like amazing resilience, for example, or the, resourcefulness or these other wonderful attributes.
yeah.
And I can't help thinking when you're speaking about this, of this study. I'm sure you know it inside and out, where they had a mouse and they gave him the smell of orange and then like an electroshock
Mhm.
and did that again and again. And poor traumatized mouse, we don't
Mhm.
love that. But, and then they skipped a generation. So then he had children,
Mhm.
his children had children.
Mhm.
And when they, passed this orange smell again, the children reacted with tension and fear and
Right,
preparation for this thing, and they had never experienced it, and not even their parents had experienced it.
right.
So science is catching up
Mhm.
to this kind of understanding that in most indigenous cultures have had forever, which is you come from something and there is something passed along there. What would you say we can kind of understand? Okay, our family, our cousins are there, and our parents are there. But what would you say about our relationship to our ancestors who have left the body? Because this is a fairly new thing starting to come into the Western mind, that there are ancestors, that they are there, that we have some potential for connection to them. I was trained in India for many years, and we do certain rituals for the ancestors. You go to the river and you leave offerings and you light candles, and my family is Sicilian and we do light candles. There's some lighting candles, but it's kind of a buried, like, oh, this is a weird superstition. This is not based in reality. But I think we're starting to open the door more and more to this potential of being a little bit with the ancestors. The indigenous folks have never forgotten.
Mhm.
We've forgotten. Now we need to remember some things.
Mhm.
I wonder if you could say something about that.
Well, Laura, I really like that you said we just need to remember, because it's not that it isn't there, that the connection
Yeah.
isn't there, but it's just bringing it to front of mind. And I
Mm.
think that when you speak about Sicilians lighting candles, that's one of the things that I've been really interested in and really encouraged by, that human beings really, up until so recently, considered things like ritual, acknowledging ancestors, supplication, asking for help, all of those things were human, really,
Yes.
in every planet, every people. And I love that you used the word superstition, because there really was an economic impetus to get people not to do that. If you would stop drinking that chicken soup, then you would buy my penicillin and you would come to my office and pay me. And if we could discredit your grandmother and her recipe, then all the better, because more likely you're going to more quickly bring your child to come and get the penicillin instead of pull out that terrible chicken soup recipe. So
Totally.
I think that there really were markets that, and I don't think that there is anything sinister. I think that we just have different movements that happen in societies. And we often also have the tendency to polarize. So this is good and this is bad. And
Yes.
in constellation work, that's the other thing that we start to notice, that people are working from their own group conscience. And so I'm doing what my family agrees to, what my community agrees to. It's not that I automatically am doing something that's negative or judgmental, but I'm really following the herd in a way. And so I think that inclusion of ancestors, there were particular forces that pushed that out somewhat. But
Yes.
one of the things that I found was, for instance, in my own tradition, when people are clearing and being in conversation with ancestors, I'm coming from desert people, so we use sage. And then when I would go to Canada, the people in the north of me would more often use cedar. And then there were some people that it actually was their own plant that they would use. sweetgrass. And then when I started to travel, then I could see that in, for instance, South Africa, they have a plethora of different herbs and plants that they burn to be in conversation with the ancestors, each one basically addressing a specific type of issue. So one particular essence might address relationship, another essence might address prosperity. And then to go to Asia, people were burning incense, and worldwide, even when I went to Europe, seeing in England, people historically, women in particular, had burned rosemary, and other places had burned spices. So there was really worldwide this conversation that involved burning something that basically represented this connection to the ethers and specifically ancestors. Never mind that many of them had additional benefits like antibacterial in small
Yes.
spaces and things like this. But human beings knew this was important. And so when I looked to see for how long people had done it and how prolific those practices were that had really clear parallels, speaking with ancestors, burning something, having a sense of respect and a sense of knowing in some ways, and it sometimes offends the Western mind to hear knowing my place. But really, the relief of knowing all of these generations came before. And there is someone who's gone through this before, and an entire community of people who have gone through this before, who are connected to me, who are happy if I do well. So when we look, and that's why sometimes I speak about modernity, it is such a recent thing that introduced the concepts of superstition or different types of pejorative identification with those practices that really just could breathe in, yeah, we all have ancestors. And I am the survival of those ancestors. I am the embodiment of all of those people. And that gives me, it's okay to say, that gives me a lot of pride and maybe more hope because I know for how many generations this embodied self has been walking on the earth, and it's a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also just something like in that simple thing, they're happy if I do well. It's like most of the time, in the West, when we think of somebody who's left the body, we just think of a ghost that's going to come haunt me and rattle pans or, something really weird and silly. We don't think of like, wow, this whole line of beings that would rejoice in my well-being, right? Like this in and of itself is hopeful, isn't it? It's like it's giving energy somehow to think of that, and you think of their struggles and you think of their immense effort, and then you're like, and here I am, and of course they want me to enjoy. Of course. Of course.
Right, right.
It's been, it's been fascinating for me because, as I mentioned, I lived in India for many, many years, and I was always kind of sensitive to this idea of cultural appropriation, right? Like, okay, I'm chanting these mantras, I'm doing these practices, I'm doing these rituals, and I'm doing them with my whole heart, but they are not mine.
Mhm,
And it's only recently that I'm starting to see I had things in my past exactly like this.
mhm,
I just lost them, and someone had the sense to retain them.
mhm,
And so, of course, I will be nourished by doing those actions because they're so similar. Like you were saying with the burning,
mhm,
it's like when you really reduce ritual down, these components are replicable in every society that has preserved ritual. I had an interesting moment because I go to a Hindu temple, right? And they take the deity out and they walk her around.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, wow, that's so crazy. And then I was thinking, wait a minute, they do this in Sicily. They take the Madonna out and they walk her around. And I was
Right,
like, oh, it's not different. It's
right,
just
right.
it's just these the names and the shapes and maybe the colors, and but
Mm-hmm.
there is a human way of being
Right,
in the world,
right.
and we're at different degrees of separation from that humanness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it is a deep desire of ours as human beings to have reverence,
Mm-hmm.
to like have to do things which revere
Mm-hmm.
our ancestors, the unifying field, the force that lives us all. Like it's so human.
Yeah.
And I think when we don't have it, we feel bereft of
Mm-hmm.
it. We
Mm-hmm.
really feel the loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am very curious, Francesca, if you could speak a little bit about your finding of constellation and your deciding this is for me, because coming from the culture that you came from, and why was it this thing specifically for you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious
Yeah.
to know this.
Oh, well,
I'm sure it's not a one
came,
sentence story.
it came to me. I'm in a very rural area in northeastern Washington State in the US. And so, by just a series of really uncanny circumstances, I came to work at an integrative health clinic, which at that time was very new. There were
Mm,
maybe a couple in the United States where there
mm,
was this new theory, the new idea that all these different ways that people heal, what if they were all integrated into one space? So there
mm,
was yoga, there was allopathic medicine, there was acupuncture, there was physical medicine department and nutrition and a variety of different types of healing modalities. And I came in to work originally in the physical medicine department. And within really days of my being hired, which I hadn't really been looking for a job, and a number of neighbors said, you need to go to this place. There's a
mm-hmm.
really something that's waiting for you. So I really was not even thinking about that and had several people say something. So I went, and the director of the clinic had met Snee Victoria Schnabel when he took a trip to Germany to revisit one of the universities that he had gone to, and asked her, would you be willing to come and do a constellation training in Colville, Washington? At that time, I think that's the closest big city, which I think was less than 3,000 people at that time. And so she came from Freiburg, Germany, not knowing where
Wow.
Colville. She said, of course. So for 2 years she came,
Mm,
and it was immediate that I really recognized this is home for me. And my caution was on both sides. I had a very strong feeling that it was not so different from ceremony, and there was no prayer, no preparation. It's just, let's do this thing. And I felt not entirely comfortable with that. So I went, spoke with elders who were all alive at the time and said, this is what this looks like. Is it okay? And so they said, just remember to say your prayers and protect yourself. So my mom made me moccasins to wear, and there was different kinds of things to just acknowledge that this field was sacred in some way.
yes.
And so, having been getting that kind of approval, I, through a series of events, happened to be sitting at the table with Hunter Beaumont, who was the translator for Bert Hellinger, at a very
Mm,
large event in Germany, like auditoriums of 2,000 people would come to listen. And I certainly wouldn't have approached anybody, but I knew I needed to say, for me, this is ceremony. And so, do I have permission to do this? And somehow he came and sat at the table where I was in this massive cafeteria. And so I knew I had to be able to bring my question. And he said, just call it constellation as ceremony. So I thought, have approval on both sides.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah. So it was just that
And don't you have some German ancestry as well?
I don't.
Okay.
But I could say that there was a kind of direct communication that's a part of German culture that sometimes was seen as abrasive by a lot of Americans. But for me, it was very similar to being in conversation with elders.
Yes.
So, in a lot of Native traditions, there's not a lot of fanfare about the exchange. If someone's going to tell you the truth, they're going to tell you the truth. So I didn't have the reaction that some people had when the communication was very direct, because it was given in the same way that it was really, this is what's true. And it is the same. One book that Hellinger wrote that's out of print now, the title just stays with me, and it was Acknowledging What Is. That's really what we're doing. We're just looking at and making a space for and remembering this is what's
Yes.
true. Yeah.
Yes. And so has that been successful is super not the word I'm looking for, but have you felt like you were able to kind of thread these two things together and to create ceremony out of what was quite German and
Mhm.
and just direct
Yeah.
was yeah.
Well, yes, and I think that that's one of the things that is so remarkable, that being part of the seat of psychotherapy, it was really the Germans who were willing to expand this work. So, for instance, one of my first questions was, how is it that we're looking at family, but we're excluding our other relatives, like everything in nature?
Yes.
And so one of the things that really the founders of the work were so amenable to was inclusion. So it ended up that people could combine constellation work and yoga, could combine constellation work and five elements, could combine constellation work and music or sound or voice, movement. So there was just this really almost a counterintuitive kind of expanse, that
Yes.
a kind of culture that's really observed as being rather linear, that those people that were drawn to the development of this work had just an uncanny ability to be curious and to be inclusive. And I remember one of the things that sticks in my mind is um, the first teacher that I had, Sneh Victoria Schnabel, developed something that's called a chaos constellation. And it really included hundreds of people in one forum. And it was really for each person there to take what's present for them, follow the movement. And so, in that mass of people, folks could really open their heart and perhaps encounter a representative for an aunt who had died tragically, or a representative for a sibling who was excluded or estranged. And so people had so many things that happened for them in that space. And then there was a place where the movement really stopped. So the whole of the field said, ah. And I knew this work. And so I was at a different workshop, but I was waiting for some folks to come out. And this one really big German guy came really running out of the space, and someone said, what happened? What happened? And he said, I have no idea, but it was wonderful. So,
And that's kind of it, huh?
but that kind of openness was, I think, part and parcel of those people that perhaps the field pulled together
For sure.
that held the door open, you know?
It's so beautiful and so amazing. I'm wondering if you can say something about nature constellations, because this was actually how I got introduced to the idea of you, is because I was doing constellations with not family and not, and I had a friend who was studying with you, and she said, and she does them with nature, and I was like, oh, because it touched me so deeply, because how often do we need to hear from that component of our reality?
Yeah.
Is there something you can just say about what is a nature constellation? How does that
Uh,
work?
there's such a huge expanse, but of course, there are a couple of aspects. One is really nature herself, so all the components, all of the uh, communities, everything in nature. The other, actually, Americans are fairly unique to try to distinguish between nature constellations and environmental constellations. And so
Okay.
environmental constellations are those that impact environment, that have socio-political implications as well. Most other countries, it's all one, which is nature constellation. Any place where nature is present or implicated, the mind has that kind of paradigm that it's all included. It's incredibly helpful. It can be introduced into a family constellation as a resource. So if people have been really traumatized or, for instance, badly abused and they have real neurological difficulty connecting to human beings, there are times when we can begin to introduce aspects of nature as a resource. And then there are some folks in neurology that have a very intriguing question, which is what happens to the brain if I have cut people off entirely for my own protection? And yet, this field opens my heart, opens my ability to self regulate when a tree, for instance, comes into a population. And at what point does my brain begin to recognize that's a human being representing a tree? So there is a lot of intrigue, a lot of hope in terms of the possibilities with that. But it also gives us the opportunity to look at very specifically things that are happening in nature. So I've been privileged to do a number of constellations for beekeepers, looking at different aspects of what is happening in colonies, or so it really gives us another doorway to be able to understand the interdynamics of different aspects in the natural world. So I think it has implications for science. I have some folks that have been foresters or biologists. There's been people involved with animal husbandry, so pet constellations, and being able to work with bereavement for folks who have had a pet perhaps for 30 years, and looking at how sometimes that grief actually may interface with some kind of systemic grief within our own family system. So just being open to nature as one of the possibilities, one of the conduits for our expansion to help our heart open. And again, to have a maybe more human definition of inclusion.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, for me, I live in an animate universe. Like, of course, the tree has something to say about it, but I think that it's speaking about something very beautiful coming to light, right? That we would even entertain that possibility that the land, I don't know, that I'm going to build my house on has something to say about things. It's it's like for me, a very good sign.
Yeah.
For me, a
Yeah.
very positive movement.
Well, and I think that it's one of the things that it's again part of the expansion of constellation work to find that people, for instance, who are involved in real estate, and
Mm.
do constellations with prospective buyers or prospective sellers to see, what does the land say? Is that place in agreement with me? And then also being able to acknowledge places where the land has injury, or where there have
Mm.
been, we came to identify that there are two fields. One is the field, the knowing field, or the energetic field of geopolitical, so the things that have happened in that place. And then the other is deep earth, or terra
Mm.
firma. And so if there's a place where people are always moving in and out, moving in and out, and there's something traumatic that happened there, to be able again to combine constellation ritual and see, what does the land have to say, who wasn't acknowledged, what is the land remembering, and to be able to acknowledge it and give peace to that place, I think is, and again, culturally, most cultures had as routine a kind of a blessing of the house, or a blessing of the place, until we realized that was ridiculous, and then and then we started to suffer.
Yes. Oops.
So it's really lovely that all of these things that our relatives, all of our relatives did,
Yes.
had a tremendous amount of wisdom.
They
Yeah,
did, didn't they?
yeah.
Do you have any, because we start to speak about the field and we start to see that this is a place of tremendous resource for us. You know, if there is this place where it is known,
Mhm.
then when I can be in relationship with that field, of course my life is
Mhm.
more whole, right? And I'm living in a more human way. I can be in relationship with the algorithm, or I can be in relationship with the knowing field. It seems like they're poles. But I'm wondering if you have any ideas for people who are like, oh, I'm curious about that, but I don't know what the knowing field is. Where do I find it? How do I locate it? Like, how am I in relationship with it? Is there a way, maybe from the indigenous knowing, of connecting? And because for me, it's like you have to be connected to it if you want it to respond to you, even in a constellation. Like, you have to court the knowing field and you have to make yourself available for it all the time, not just in that half hour that you're helping somebody with that thing. And yeah, so I'm just wondering if you have any insight into what are some ways that everyone could start to connect with this field.
Right. Yeah, that's really sweet. I think that so much is perspective.
Mm.
Um, and when you mentioned algorithms, I remember there was a Blackfoot elder, and during COVID, there was a group that was called together and on Zoom. And so she was in her upper 80s,
Mm.
PhD,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant elder in every way. And she said, I was really nervous about Zoom. I mean, I've not done this. I was nervous about Zoom. And then I sat with it and I realized, oh, Zoom is spirit. You can't see it. You don't know exactly how it works, but it connects everyone in a good way.
Mm.
And so that really stuck with me. And I thought,
Mm.
isn't that perhaps what it is? It's
Mm.
just knowing that this is present everywhere. And those places where I have aversion, or where I move too quickly, it's not that it isn't there. It's just that I'm not acknowledging it, not making a space for it. So I think that all of those different traditions, those different practices that bring, it's like she said, I sat with it for a minute. Just that stillness, whatever it is that introduces that stillness or supports that stillness, I think it's one of the things that helps us perhaps to be more open for that constant presence. So I think that maybe that's the indigenous piece, that there's never a moment that it's absent. There's never a moment that my ancestors are absent from me. As long as I'm walking around with these bones and this blood, they're in my body and they're also in my field. And so it's just the reality. My perspective is what determines to what degree I interact with that. I don't know if that
So
answers or.
it does, and I always come back to like meditation really is the thing, and not necessarily like some elaborate thing that I'm doing, but to
Yeah,
take the time and stop and how am I and what's going on,
yeah,
and how is it and what's going on is crucial, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And I
Thank you
think
for
that
that.
interactivity, sometimes people are surprised and they remember, for instance, being outside. If someone does take a moment to touch a tree, or to just be aware in a slightly different way, it's just been lovely to hear how many people share that there was something that seemed conversant that happened. So if I am really stressed and I go outside and I think it might sound crazy, but I'm going to touch this tree, and then the wind comes and
Yeah,
it's almost as though I can feel something touching my cheek, like it's okay, you know.
yeah.
So I think that it's the way to connect with the knowing field in general and the ancestors in general is just knowing that that's present. And I think nothing is forced. We're never pressured, we're never overridden, or we have agency. So it
Yeah.
is an option to connect or not to connect. We always have our own, it's our decision. It's not anything that we're forced to do. Yeah.
That's really beautiful to just know it as an option. Like it's there.
Hmm.
It's there. Slowing down, going outside, being still. Like it's there,
Yeah.
right? And we forget. We forget. I've taken a lot of your time, Francesca, but I want to ask about your new book coming out. If there's anything that you could say about it, it's really
Uh,
exciting.
I'm really happy. Yeah, thank you. It's just Love in Family Systems Constellation, an invitation to life. And so in the winter, we have a lot of snow. And so I don't travel in the winter. And very often I have notes through the year, and the stillness that you're talking about, I just let things visit me. And I really was
Yes.
touched a lot by love, and about especially the aspect of when we're working with folks who are trying to access love or who have had difficulty loving. One of the things that we sometimes don't really look at closely is, do I believe in love? And if I don't, or if I have real difficulty with love myself, how can I accompany someone who has that challenge? How can I really best accompany that person? So it's a number of things, some personal inquiries and some different introductions to aspects in family systems that can create generational barriers sometimes. So I'm very happy and hopeful, because my prayer, I guess, is that it will be something that a person individually would be able to be in partnership with and have their own process, again, really trusting their own capacity and knowing they have capacity, but also knowing that it's a personal choice. How far do I want to go with this or with this? And then connecting to the ancestral past, which has been there for a long time. The publisher asked me if I would be willing to let it become audiobook. So this,
Oh.
very recently it became an audiobook. So now connecting to the ancestral past is available for people, and I don't post links because I guess for people that do the audiobooks, there are so many different places that have
Right.
the orders. So yeah, so those
Right.
are two things that I hope will
Amazing.
expand access for people.
And I'm just going to say, I don't know why they always show it backward. I didn't ask them to put it backward, but maybe when I show it, maybe when we do the final thing, it'll be forward. But this book, Connecting to Our Ancestral Past, Healing Through Family Constellation, Ceremony, and Ritual, I have been so enriched and enlivened by this book. I found it really like simple, clear, and touching, really moving. So I highly recommend anyone that would like to connect in a little more with Francesca's work. This new book, I can't wait to get it. And this book that I just mentioned are amazing ways. And Francesca, I'll link your website as well for anyone that wants to look into trainings. You're doing a number of trainings throughout the year, no? Is
Yes, I don't have my schedule up for next year, but yeah, I do workshops and there are a variety of different conferences that are available for people where I present or provide workshops. And then I do workshops that are available for folks that just want to come in and experience constellation work, and then often a training that's a year-long, 21 days, usually 7 segments of 3 day training. So yeah, so I feel very blessed that there are lots of ways that people can access the work. And then on my
yes.
website, there's also a link for an international registry. So people from a lot of different countries. It's by no means all of the facilitators because now, fortunately, there are so many really excellent facilitators of constellation work. But there is a
So
link that's
amazing.
international. So if folks have family members in other countries who are interested, and India now has just a really wonderful presence of quality
Beautiful.
facilitators. So yeah. So and Italy, of course, has had facilitators for a long time, but it's welcoming.
Amazing.
The world needs it and welcomes it.
Yes, I heartily agree with this. Francesca, thank you so much for your time. It's been so beautiful to speak to you. I learned so much. I feel like I have so much more clarity now, and I want you to come back at some moment and we'll talk more.
I,
But yeah,
yeah,
thank you so much really for taking the time.
yeah. Laura, I really appreciate the invitation. It was a really beautiful exchange. And I
It
thank
was
you so much. It's just very warm and I I enjoy this a lot.
me too. Thank you. I hope you'll be back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That sounds lovely. I appreciate it.